Welcome to the Spirit of Western States, the official podcast of the world's oldest and most iconic 100-mile trail race, the Western States Endurance Run. I'm Carrie Mean, the Assistant Race Director of Western States, and I'm here with my co-host, John Trent. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Carrie. Good to be with you.
You as well. We are fresh off of Western States Lottery weekend, and we're going to dive into all things lottery this weekend. But before we do that, John, would you mind giving us the cliff notes of your amazing CIM run yesterday?
Thanks, Carrie. Yeah, this was a marathon that I've really been pointing for. I had a pretty major surgery on my quad about a year and a half ago, and it's been a slow, nonlinear sort of comeback. And I'd run a marathon as a kind of a comeback race in Napa in March, and it didn't, it was tough. I was more run walking at that point. I was just out of PT and stuff like that. And so yesterday was more about, running and actually running other than going into the aid stations and grabbing a cup of electrolytes and then walking out and then starting to run, to catch back up to your pace group. It was more like that. So it felt like real running yesterday. I felt strong the whole way. The energy at Cal International Marathon in Sacramento is just amazing. I mean, I got emotional 4 or 5 different times where it's just like all these people are just cheering their heads off for you. You get into downtown Sacramento near the end and there's this music and people are out and it's an amazing community gathering. And to be around in the 4:30 pace group, which I caught up to. I started out kind of like with the 4:35 and then caught up to the 4:30. So I was charging, but then I hung with the 4:30 pace group for almost to the very end. And that was a great group too. Just people were like, into it and I was into it. We're all smiling and everything. There were nobody was down in the dumps and like, oh, I'm going to zombie walk it in. We were all just charging to the finish. It was an incredible feeling. And to get to that finish, to know that I ran pretty much the whole way and didn't slow down. You know how that is in a marathon
I
when you
do,
have that
yes.
feeling when you're just passing people, you're feeling good, the people around you are
It's the
feeling good.
best.
It was everything that I was hoping it would be and then some. It was just, it was cool how early on there was fog and, you're kind of running along and, you start in Folsom and it's kind of out in the country and you work your way, into the city and just all the different sensory sort of things that you have as you're looking around, you go from the fog kind of into the daylight, if you will. It was remarkable.
That sounds amazing, John. Did you happen to see MJ, Melissa Johnson, out there? She was pacing
Because I I was
4:35.
gonna run with MJ's group because she was she and Jen Hennon were the
Yes.
4:35 pace group, and I was lined up near them. I shouldn't say this, but about a mile in, had to go pee really bad, and so I jumped off, um, into some bushes. I made sure that nobody could see. But by the time I got out, it was completely discombobulated. I didn't know where MJ and that group was, and I didn't know where the 4:30 was. So I kind of just started running because I wanted to run with MJ because MJ, as you know, is an incredible member of the community, an Auburn
Right.
lady, just who gives her heart and soul to the sport, and she's just such a high energy person and so positive. That was kind of my goal, and then I never did, unfortunately, and I kind of kept picking up the pace. I think I pulled away from them and then eventually caught up to the 4:30 pace group instead.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering about that because I was with her last night when I saw your results and I told her and she's like, "Oh my gosh, he was just, just ahead of us." So anyhow, but yes, she is all of those things and a big part of Western States community and just a wonderful person. So congratulations, John. That is only let me do some less than 2 months. Let's just say that month and a half, 6 weeks or so off of Javelina 100 too. It's even just more
Yeah.
impressive that you had that performance at CIM. So very happy for you that you are back and running injury free and recovered from your surgery.
Thanks,
And
Carrie.
just continually inspiring. Yeah, great job.
I'm happy to be
Okay.
back. It's been great.
Yes, I'm sure you are. Well, let's dive into some Western States lottery chatter. So, if you're tuning in for the first time, which this is episode 2, so if you haven't listened to episode 1, recommend you go back, listen to that. We dive into how the Western States lottery came to be in episode 1, and how we got to 369 spots for Western States and so forth. So, we won't repeat all of that, but go back and listen to episode 1 if you're interested in those stats. For now, we are going to talk about this weekend and the results for our lottery. So, John, we went into the weekend to Saturday's lottery with 257 spots to fill. And why not 369 spots? So, we're going to dive into that first. And we will start off. I'll have you, if you will, go through our volunteerism and how we used the aid station spots for the race and how that kind of came to be and why it's important that we do that.
Yeah, Carrie, it's important part of it. I think the way we look at it now, and it's evolved with the aid station spots over the years. I think now this is our way. This is the Western States way to stay connected to the local community and to make sure that there's representation of the local runners for the most part. It's gotten to the point now, like, you'll get into this a little bit. It's gotten to the point now where, like, and you see this in the auditorium for the lottery. There are people that are chosen out of the audience, but it's not a big number of local people who are there that get chosen the day of the lottery, unfortunately, just because the numbers are just so overwhelming now. But, with the aid station spots, each aid station at Western States gets one entry every year into the run. So for the most part, these are all local running clubs, local running organizations from kind of the Auburn, Sacramento, or even, over in Reno where I live, and sort of in at that sort of general area. So then that ensures that, you're going to have maybe, I forget, and you'll know exactly, Carrie, it's like 28 stations, I think it is, that we have, something like that,
Right.
right?
Yes.
And so then there's at least 20 local runners that are going to be in the race. So that serves an important purpose because, Topher Gaylord, our president, on Saturday spoke eloquently about, we are about the community for the community. And this is a real way that sort of goal happens for the race. Just to give you an example of how this can work. So aid stations, they get that one spot. And for the most part, I think most of the aid stations followed the same sort of method. And I'll give you an example for Forest Hill. I live in Reno. Silver State Striders are the local running club here in Reno. The Striders have done the aid station at Forest Hill for 3 decades now. And with our spot, we make sure that it's not just some random person that we choose. It has to be an integral person of our club. You have to have 25 hours of volunteer work during the course of the year. You have to write us an essay that explains why, our club and Western States is important to you. And then you have to be a regular presence. We have weekly runs, and you have to show up to those. You can't just volunteer, pile up a bunch of volunteer hours, but we never see you otherwise. So you have to be a real integral cog for our club. And then, so to give you an example, this year we had 4 people that, I think it was 4. It's all blurry now at
A
this
lot of
point.
numbers in our heads right now.
And then we have our own lottery, which we had a couple of weeks ago. We get together, have some pizza and some drink, and we select out of a hat, our representative for this year's race. And we've done this for many years. And I think for the most part, all the other aid stations use a method similar to this. I mean, what Craig makes clear to all the aid stations is you need to have this choice made before the lottery. Used to be a few years ago, clubs sometimes would wait a while and it'd be like after the first of the year and then they'd give that name. Can't do that anymore because everybody watches that, and you'll get into the numbers here about how that works. You can't be adding people after the lottery. So everybody now at all the aid stations make sure that they get these names to you and Craig ahead of time. The aid station idea really it formed, for an entry into the race. It was kind of an informal thing, many years ago. Norm Klein was the race director in the late 1980s, and throughout the 90s. And there was kind of like this friend of Norm, FON thing, where like if you were a friend of Norm, you'd get in the race. And really, I mean, what Norm was trying to do was there were these incredible volunteers that he felt, should get into the race because, I mean, they would just be out at these aid stations and doing incredible things for the race. So they would find their way into the race based on that. And it became much more formalized, I want to say early 2000s, where the aid stations, maybe it was even late 90s, where the aid stations did get a spot. That's what we followed ever since. And it's interesting too, Carrie, over the years, the number of aid stations, it's gone down. And these
Right.
aid
Right.
station
That's a good point.
spots, these entries have gone away. To give you an example, there used to be an aid station at the bottom of Bath Road, and they would get a spot. And then that aid station went away. There used to be an aid station at the escarpment right below that ski lift. They'd give you water, 2 miles into the race, and that got a spot. So that, as aid stations and, the course would go in different directions. It used to go along, sort of Kavanaugh Ridge away from Robinson Flat, and there'd be these aid stations that no longer exist, like Deep Canyon. So as those would go away, that would be kind of a difficult sort of communication the race director would have to make to these aid station captains to say, hey, your aid station doesn't exist anymore, or at least we're not going to have it anymore. And then B, you don't get a spot anymore. And I think Craig especially has handled that very well over the years in terms of communicating that. And what's happened is some aid station groups have kind of joined forces together. Volunteers have gone on to other aid stations, and it's worked out pretty well. But that's kind of like how that has worked. And I wonder, thinking about the Granite Chief reroute and what's going to happen with that perhaps next year or the year after, are there going to be aid stations up there? And how's that going to work? Probably not. I
Mhm.
wouldn't think. I think we're still good from the start to Lion Ridge, but you never know.
That's right. You never know. Yeah, that's a good point to make about the how it's, been a fluid thing and how that has evolved over the years of the number of aid stations we've had and, why those changes have taken place. And you're right. It could continue to change for various reasons. Some of our aid stations are packed pretty tight, like Cow Street aid stations, and for those of us that were running through there in the middle of the night and having a struggle, like that was pretty dang nice to have them that close. Is it necessary? Probably not, but a little bit of a luxury, especially if you're riding the struggle bus, like I was. But I appreciate that explanation. And on that note, to add, in addition to the aid station volunteers, obviously, they have a lot of interaction with the runners during the race. They are integral in like getting us to the finish line. They have a huge impact on the runner experience. But I want to make sure I also just touch on briefly the volunteers that our runners never see, and that those volunteers never see runners are our parking volunteers. And parking is a real challenge at our aid stations where crews are allowed. And so it's one of those like, unsung heroes of the race are those out there parking cars and never get to see the race and never get to see runners. So we have a spot for in the race for our parking areas. So basically they can all nominate, our parking managers at each of the aid stations where crews are allowed can nominate a runner. And then we have a little committee that kind of picks from them, but kind of same idea. The parking managers will kind of send us their resume, and sometimes those runners will write an essay and how many years have they been volunteering. Our parking spot this year went to a driver's flat volunteer, and he has been at that spot, which is maybe better known to people as like, the river crossing. But if you've ever crewed or paced, or that it's like where you park is about a 2.5 mile drive down to the river where the actual aid station is. So anyhow, he's worked the overnight shift there for multiple years volunteering and has been in the lottery. And so we were really thrilled to offer him the spot this year, because that's the overnight shift alone is tough, especially when you don't get to see a bit of the race and managing cars and people that are stressed out trying to get to their runner and so forth. So our parking volunteers, we have a giant team of course marking team, which again, they may not see any of the race unless they go out and mark and then come back and volunteer somewhere else, which a lot of them do. And our sweep team as well. So, they're back behind the runners and picking up course markings and keeping track of lost runners. We have a whole ham radio team.
Yeah.
And then, of course, our start and finish line teams as well. So just want to make sure we mention them. And we're going to, and foreshadowing our next episode, John, as we have planned in January, will be all about volunteerism and aid stations. So we'll dive more into this, but I did want to mention them real quick.
Sure.
And then, John, thank you for that wonderful description of how important it is that we have those spots in the race to award people that have been such an important part of the running community, Western states, of course, too, but the running community as a whole. And could you give us a brief description also? We have a couple spots every year that are designated to a silver legend entry, and then we have something that's called special consideration. Could you tell us about those?
Sure, Carrie. Yeah. Special consideration has been around for a really long time. I can remember asking for special consideration back in the 1990s when I wanted to get into the race.
That's fine.
Special
That's
consideration is
Did
an
you get
individual.
it?
Actually, I did get it one year.
Okay. You deserved it, I'm sure.
Basically, the criteria for special consideration is it's unusual and extraordinary contributions to Western states. Just, that's it. I mean, you and sometimes people stretch that a little bit, and we get some incredible submissions. I mean, people that you're like, oh my God, this is, by rejecting this person, this is like rejecting Mother Teresa or Martin Luther King Jr. I
I
mean,
know,
it's
yeah.
just these people, they do extraordinary things in their community. They have incredible stories, but that's not necessarily an exceptional contribution to Western states itself. And so that's kind of what,
It's a good point to make.
yeah. Yes, that's what the committee sort of looks at is that. So that's special consideration where somehow what these individuals have done has helped contribute to or can contribute to Western states in some exceptional
And
way.
John, to interrupt you real quick, you just said committee. So I think that's just like an important note to make that special consideration isn't just being decided by, one person within the organization, right? So what is the committee? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, there's a committee of 4 or 5 of us. Craig receives, that's on the website. People can apply for special consideration ahead of time. They have to do that, of course, before the lottery. Craig has, these individuals send very detailed recountings of who they are and what they've done. He shares that with the committee. The committee examines all of the submissions, and based on the merits of those submissions through a voting system, usually one, sometimes two, usually not more than two, and more like one each year is chosen. And you're probably talking there can be as many as 8, 10, 12 special consideration requests, and out of that one. So the standard is very high for that.
Yeah. And that committee is composed of board members, of Western States board
Correct.
members. Is that right? Okay.
Correct.
Great. Thank you for that. Okay. Sorry to interrupt. I think you were going to move on to Silver Legend.
Yeah, and so the Silver Legend is based in honor of Greg Soderlund, our race director for more than a decade, who passed away in 2016. The idea behind this is, older runners, sometimes older runners, they can't look at the lottery and say, I'm 68 years old, and if I, maybe I'll be 78 when I finally get chosen.
Right.
This is a way to make sure that we have at least one older runner in the race. But more importantly, these individuals, they have to show that throughout their running life, they've contributed in significant ways to the sport, significant and meaningful ways to the sport. So it can't just be, I'm a 50-year-old guy and I'd like to set the age group record at Westerns, or I'm a 60-year-old guy and I want to set the age group record. Let me in. It has to be a lot more than that. You have to show that you are contributing to your local running community, to a regional running community. And really, frankly, Carrie, it helps if you go beyond the running part and you're just, if you can show, well, like, for example, the Silver Legend selection this year was a woman named Stephanie Irving, 63-year-old from Washington State, has finished 93 ultras, and that's fine. That's great. But really what sets Stephanie apart was the fact that Stephanie has volunteered for thousands of hours for trail work in her local community. And in fact, she was the driving force behind the creation of a trail system. I think it was around Trout Lake, Washington area. And in addition, is not only involved in ultra running, but in the equestrian community, in ride and tie, and has been a kind of a centralizing force to bring all these communities together. So when you look at a person like that, not only is she just a 63-year-old woman who's finished 93 ultras, but there's so much more to it. And that is in the spirit of what Greg Soderlund was all about, where volunteerism, giving back in a significant way. That was what Greg was all about. And I think Stephanie is a great emblem of what that honor is all about.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. Stephanie's a wonderful person and extremely deserving. And if anybody tuning in, if you've watched the live stream during the lottery Saturday, Topher did a great job of going over her resume and bringing her up on stage. So that was wonderful. And Stephanie had she been in the lottery, she had 256 tickets. So she's been trying for 9 years. to get in. So it feels even, extra deserving that she's put in such a commitment to running her qualifying races every year and getting in. And so anyhow, thank you for that description of Silver Legend. I think it's a wonderful thing that we can do to honor Greg and also, our older running community and those that have put in just years and years of contribution to the ultra running community. Yeah, thanks, John. Okay, so in episode 1, I also went over all the other entry methods. I'll just list them now, but not go into detail since we already talked about that, and it's on the website. But we have our golden ticket races, which are 6 races. Those take 30 spots, and that are, kind of keeps our competitive elite field filled, as well as our top 10 men and women from the previous year are invited back. And this year we had 10 out of 10 women accept the invitation to come back. And there was like some chatter like, have we ever had all 10 women come back? And no one was really exactly sure, but anyhow, we're excited that all 10 are coming back. And then 7 of our 10 men are coming back. So 17 out of 20, we feel is a really great number of our elite field coming back to run in 2026. Knocking on wood, they all stay healthy and can make it to the start line. Yes, fingers crossed. We have our sponsor spots that that certain sponsors have spots in the race that they can use kind of however they want. We have several of them that use them to increase the diversity of our race for underrepresented communities. Most of the time, these sponsor spots are given to people that haven't run Western States before. But those spots are really important as well because our sponsors are so important to the race, not only because of how they support trail running, ultra running in general, but also just financially. Being a nonprofit and only having 9 spots for registration fees, we need them to keep going financially. So that's what you'll see. We'll say sponsor next to those. Even our diversity spots will be listed as sponsor. And I'm saying this, I should tell people on our entrance list, which was just posted this morning. Craig just got that up on the website this morning. He has listed the way that everyone has gotten in. So very transparent. There's no secrets. There's no hidden ways to get in. Go onto the website, look up 2026 entrance list, and you'll see next to every person's name how they got in. So, and then if they got in through the lottery, it's going to tell you how many tickets they had to get into the lottery, which on that note, I'm going to bring up the screen real quick. This year, the most amount of people that got in through the lottery were the 64 ticket holders. 65 out of that 254 number had 64 tickets. Second largest was our 128 ticket holders with 50. And then looks like our 32 ticket holders. So anyhow, this is also on the website under our lottery picks link. It'll tell you, 15 people with 1 ticket got in. So hopefully they bought an actual real lottery ticket Saturday too. Because the odds of that were quite low. We had 32 of our 256 ticket holders get in. That equates to 9 years. And out of our 5 runners that had 512 tickets, only 2 got picked. We run simulations. We have a lot of people, as you know, John, in our organization that are, self-proclaimed data nerds.
Yeah.
And run the simulations and probabilities. And it showed that 4 out of 5 would get in, and it ended up being 2. But what we did do was put those 3 that didn't get in at the top of the wait list, which is practically a guarantee that they're going to get in. And on that note, 1 already has. So we'll talk about that. Oh, to summarize everything we just said, we have 369 spots in the race. Once we assign all of those race admin, which are like the aid station volunteer spots, for legends, special consideration, sponsor spots, golden tickets, top 10. This year, the number fluctuates every year by a few. It's pretty consistent, but few. We had 57 spots going into the lottery. Okay. And what people may or may not know that 3 of those spots every year are drawn at the lottery within the lottery, which means anybody in person now has a chance to get one of those 3 spots that we call at the very end of the lottery on Saturday. So now take those 3 out. That's where the 254 number came from that we drew with also a wait list of 75 runners. Okay. So here we are at 254 that we go into Saturday. Somewhere in the 200-ish, a little over 200 range, we started experiencing some network issues. We're at the high school auditorium. Some of we have our live broadcast going on. We have our portal with a lot of computers up because we do, not just electronic draw, but we have manual backup. As if you're watching it, you can see all of it, on stage and writing and so forth. So, and then we have thousands of people on our lottery page, on our website, on the broadcast. Long story short, we had some network issues and the lottery draw system skipped a number. It bound, and if you were watching it, you'd see 200 draw 213. The good news is it did not skip a person. It skipped the number. We ended up drawing 253. So we have to keep moving. It's really hard to stop what we're doing and troubleshoot what's happening right then. Not only because, we have the live broadcast, we have people sitting there in person, but we have a time limit. We have the nutcracker coming in behind us and we
Nutcracker.
have to be out of there. So we have to keep moving. And then after the fact, okay, we drew it. It really was 253. And therefore, number one on the wait list, which was a 512 ticket holder, was invited to take that basically missing 212 spot. Seems like the appropriate thing to do. But so now we're at our number 254. Then we draw the 3. Chris Thornley gets the honor of that every year with Squirrels Nut Butter. If you were there, you'd see the little playing cards that you get, which is a fun tradition, that are Squirrels Nut Butter branded. And so he draws those. Those are super fun because those people are guaranteed to be there because you have to be there to get them. So it's a lot of excitement around it. So that's super fun. And then we draw the wait list of 75, and how that works between now and the race are able to withdraw if they need to. Life happens, injuries happen, things come up. So it's inevitable that we lose people. But this wait list allows us to make sure we get to the start line with 369, that no spot is left unfilled. And then we just start working our way down that wait list of inviting people off of that as we lose runners. And did I miss anything there, John?
Now, Carrie, I think you summed it up really, really well. Speaking of like numbers and getting ahead of, what the group on the stage is trying to keep track of, I remember we've come along, even with this little glitch from Saturday, we've come a long ways. I can remember just a couple of years ago being up there. I think I was one of the celebrity push the button people or whatever. And I started pushing the button too fast. And I remember I think it was like Sherry Alvarez, who's one of our race managers, was like, slow down, slow, you're hitting, we got to keep track of this and you're hitting the button too fast.
So actually that happened Saturday too. So I have never been on stage as one of the manual recorders. I normally have some other less important job, don't lottery day, to be honest. And we were down a volunteer Saturday. So Sherry calls me I need you to come on stage to help. And man, that was so basically how it works is so Sherry was my partner and I had the clipboards for 4 and 8 ticket holders. So if somebody was called that had either 4 or 8, she reads me their ID number and it's on our computer screen and their name frantically, because as soon as you or the celebrity ticket puller hits the button to go to the next one, boom, that's gone off our screen. So that's why she'd be like, slow down. And then she had 1 and 2 ticket holders. So it would come up and I'd read the number off the screen while she's writing it down and so forth. We had Keenan and Heidi and Lori helping with that as well. And then, Jesse was helping with recording also. So anyhow, we're just extremely focused on that computer screen and getting those numbers down, because in the case where you do have technology glitches, it just, it does happen. As prepared as we can be and as robust as our system may be, it does happen. And so having that manual backup is important. But yeah, that's funny that you mentioned that, because that did happen. And definitely gave me a new appreciation for our volunteers that are up there scrambling to get that written in while we're trying to move. We have all these things we're trying to balance, is the timing, but also making sure we're diligent about our recording processes. So So anyhow, let's talk a little bit about our lottery numbers. I think last year there was some speculation that, especially with our one ticket applicants, maybe applications were getting a little bit flat, or maybe a little bit of a plateau. But then we that did not was not the case this year. We saw a pretty big growth in applicants. I think it was in the 13% range. Like I said, lots of numbers in our heads right now, but we had 11,328 people in our lottery this year. So that was up from under 10,000 last year. It was like 9 something. So pretty impressive. Honestly, if I would have had to like gamble or bet, I wouldn't have bet that we would have had that many this year, but we did, which is just showing that there's still a lot of interest in the sport. Obviously, a lot of interest in the race. Our one ticket applicants went up again, so people are trying to start their journey, seeing, this will take a few years, not for those 15 one ticket holders, but for everyone else. This is going to take a few years. I better get started now. We had, out of that 11,328, 69 of those had one ticket. So more than any other ticket count. Anyways, so fun to see that the sport is still growing, and that the interest in trail running and ultra running in Western states specifically is still there. Any thoughts on that, John?
Yeah, yeah, you're right, Carrie. Any endeavor that's has a business-based model would say 12, 13% growth every year is awesome, right? And that's what the sport is going through right now. And it's a great time to be in the sport. I know it presents some challenges and some frustrations for folks that, as you so eloquently put it, this is a journey that we're all on. And as these people, as they begin this journey, they want that instant gratification, and it becomes a test of what sort of philosophical bearing do you have about, like, is this something I want to keep doing forever, or is this something that I, maybe won't? So yeah, it's the numbers when you look at them, they're pretty staggering, but I think you have to look at it individually and think about like the 369 that are going to be running next June. That's going to be an incredible thing. And I think, if you try to keep it in that sort of perspective, that's helpful, and not let your own personal disappointment get in the way of, what's an incredible moment for 369 people come June.
Absolutely. And, John, I was just something I was thinking about when you see how many people that have applied year after year. We had 44 folks in the lottery that had 256 tickets, which is 9 years, and 128 people that had 128 tickets. And, obviously, like, their goal ultimately is to get into Western states. Like, that's the destination. But think about how many stories those folks have of all their qualifying races throughout those years. And that, it's the journey, not the destination, the cliche saying, but truly it is. And then, it culminates for them once they get to Western states. But they have all those years of memories, all that experience, all those times with their family and crew members and traveling or whatever got them to those qualifying races, that I think makes Western states even just that extra special. That it's not, Western states isn't just like one race for them. It was many years of races and many years of the trail running community that got them to Olympic Valley and then ultimately to Auburn. So I think that, and while it can be like, oh my gosh, it's going to take me forever to get in, if we look at it as that, it's the whole journey that matters to getting to Western states, not just getting to standing at that start line.
Yeah. I was part of a group text. I think we all are on group texts on lottery morning. I was part of a group text where somebody got in, and there were other people on the group text who didn't get in. But what was really heartening to me, Carrie, was all the people that were part of the group text that didn't get in. They were like, they're going to help this one person who did get in. And that's what their focus became on Saturday morning once the lottery was over. Sure, there might have been a little bit of disappointment, but they were like hitting this one runner up who did get in. You can tell they're already positioning themselves to pace, to crew, to do whatever they can to help their friend go all the way from Olympic Valley to Auburn. And that's really cool.
That is very cool, John. I actually got an email yesterday, so the day after the lottery. My friend got in. I'm going to be a pacer. What do I need to do? Where do I need to be on what day? Like they're already like, what are the requirements of me to be a pacer? And they were just so happy for their friend to get in. So it's a great point that, Western States is more than the runner, because the people that care about them and love them embrace the goal as their own as well. That's part of what makes it special, is the community. That's what it always comes back to, John. It's the community. It's the trail running community, the ultra running community, and the Western States community. And that's, I think we all like yearn and need more of that. And that's what we're all striving for when getting to Western States, is that very, very special community that's really like nothing else. So, I did forget to mention one way to get in. I hope Gary's not listening and is mad at me for getting to talk about the raffle. And I'm on the raffle committee. So we have our raffle. And so we drew 5 names. Basically, we draw one name per $5,000 of raffle sales. And so up to 5 names. And so we drew 5 names on Saturday. And I think for sure 2, maybe 3, for sure 2 were in there in person, because previously, like caveat here, you could order ahead of time through the mail, which unfortunately that is going away per California raffle laws. So this was our last lottery that we took mail-in orders. Sad day. So anyhow, those that were in person, won through the raffle. And that was for our 2027 race. So we have 2 raffle drawings a year, one in June. So the day before the race this year in 2025 was for our 2026 race. So those 5 folks will run in 2026. The ones that were drawn 2 days ago on Saturday will be for our 2027 race. So I need to make sure I mention that as well. So things are changing with the raffle, unfortunately. I've updated the website it's TBD on some of the raffle sales plans, because there's been some, ideas thrown around about selling on site, but no more mail-in orders, at least for now, the way that the law reads and so forth. So that's a bit of a bummer, but yeah, 5 lucky people got pulled from a giant bin full of raffle tickets. I think Gary said there were over 10,000 tickets in that bin. I'm not totally sure on that number. I'm sure he knows it, but anyhow, that's a lot of tickets. So speaking of our 2027 race, which is just crazy that I'm even saying that year out loud right now, but our qualifying window has opened for 2027. So I do want to talk a little bit about, let's see, what time are we at? We're at 40 minutes. We have time. A little bit about the application process and just some things for people to keep in mind over the next year if you're thinking about you want to be in the lottery for 2027. And this information is based off of emails that I receive about lottery and questions, and the most frequently asked or confusing things for people: qualifying window. And I know it can be confusing because different races have different qualifying periods. So make sure, if you're interested in Western States, you check our qualifying period, because it's not the same as like Hard Rock, for instance. We have a 12-month qualifying period that started on November 3rd of this year. So November 3rd, any race you run that's on our qualifying list on the website, make sure you go to the 2027 race lottery qualifying list. So November 3rd, 2025 to November 8th, 2026. So your race must be run within that time. We had enough people that I'm mentioning it apply for the lottery this year for a race outside of that window, and we had to remove them from the lottery. And that is never fun, to remove people from the lottery,
Yeah.
especially, when they think that they should be in the lottery and that race is a qualifier, where it may be a qualifier, but it was just the wrong year. So make sure you check out that qualifying window that I just mentioned. Make sure you pick a race off of that list. Make sure that the
Yeah.
qualifying time is the Western States qualifying time. What I mean by that is, John, that, as you know,
Yeah.
most of our races that are 100-milers on the Western States list, our qualifying time is the same as the race qualifying time. Most, not all.
Mhm.
The 100Ks, or really, let's say anything from 100K to 100 mile, or anything like much greater than 100 miles, the 200 milers, the 250 milers, our qualifying time is almost always different from the race. And there's various reasons behind that. Tropical John Medinger has put in an insane amount of thought and energy and time and expertise into kind of developing the system we use for choosing qualifying races and also determining cutoff times. And the reason we do that and that they're not always the same as the race is we want to do our best to make sure that people that are running and finishing these races have the best chance of finishing Western States in 30 hours or less. And because there's so few spots, we want those spots to go to people that are most likely to finish. We don't want to have a 50% DNF rate, and we know that as soon as you start that race, regardless of how you got in, you're being reset to 0 lottery tickets. So we want this opportunity for you to be prepared because we want you to finish. And so if that means that our qualifying time for a specific 100K or a 200 miler needs to be a bit faster than maybe a very generous time that the race has, then that's why those are implemented so that we could say, okay, you need to be able to finish it in this time because that roughly equates to a 30-hour finish at Western States. So that's why that is, because another handful of people, quite a few people that we had to remove from the lottery because they submitted a qualifying time in the qualifying period, but their time was over the cutoff time. So I just want to mention those things. If people are listening now and thinking about starting the Western States journey or in the middle of it, that think about those things going into this next year of those qualifying races and pay attention to those qualifying, because it tugs at my heart to send those emails and respond to people like that. You have to take them out of the lottery and they miss that opportunity to gain more tickets because of one of those reasons. So we had at our system does an automated match, which gets most of our results verified. But out of the 11,000, what have you, ticket applicants, we had 1,500 that came back unmatched this year. So Katie Gifford, one of our, longtime supporters of Western States and volunteers, and we basically split up that list and start going through and manually trying to verify these applicants. And it is hours upon hours over Thanksgiving because, lottery registration closes on the 21st. And so anyhow, we go through that and try to catch as many as we can that should have been verified. A lot of it's a name mismatch, like a John versus a Jonathan, or sometimes in the case that people have multiple names or certain like symbols in their name, so forth. Anyhow, so we whittled that down to just over 200. I think it was around 230 people. So we went from 1,500 to 230 that we just couldn't verify for various reasons. So then they all get an email. We couldn't verify your results. We're removing you from the lottery. If this is a mistake, email us back. So then they have about a week to email us back. And, a lot of them do and say, no, this is a mistake. Here are my results. And we're like, you're right. This is why it wasn't matched, but thank you for sending it back in the lottery. So then we add those back. But there's, and then we don't hear from a lot of people because they're like, oh, yep, they're right. I wasn't qualified. And anyhow, I always have this fear going into the lottery that we may have taken somebody out that shouldn't be taken out and they didn't get our email or
Yeah.
whatever. So anyhow, I will be reiterating this, John, for the next year about the importance of your application to the lottery and your qualifying standard, blah, blah, blah. And I think we're going to be working on continually just trying to improve our systems as well. Because with the growth and the volume of applicants, it does take changes on our end and growing as well. So anyhow, I'll get off my soapbox of that, but just wanted to mention that if anybody happens to be listening to this, that's like, okay, I want to start working on my qualifier for next year, keeping all those things in mind.
And that you explained that really, really well, Carrie, because that's an important piece. It's a piece that a lot of people don't really either know about or understand. And the fact that, it's so laborious and you have to be really meticulous about making sure that nobody falls through the cracks on that. I mean, that's incredible. And again, to reiterate, I think people need to look closely at their schedule coming up this year. What kind of races are you going to run? Does it meet the criteria? You know, and look too at like if there's a 100 miler and a 100K that's in the same event, Oftentimes, one or the other, and not both, are a Western States qualifier, and to discern that, yeah, it's an important piece for sure.
Very important. Yep, that is a very good point to make. And not all qualifiers are created equally. So, some are going to be harder than others. Absolutely. And on that note, go to our website if you're a race director or you're a racer and you want your local race to be added as a qualifier. Our criteria for becoming a qualifying race is listed on the website, or shoot me an email. I'll be happy to explain it because that list is fluid. Tropical John and I changed that throughout the entire year for various reasons. Races that come off the list get added to the list. So just making sure that you keep checking that and that your race is still listed as a qualifier. And if you know of a wonderful race that you think should be added as a qualifying race, to shoot us an email. We have, how many qualifiers do we have going into our 2027 race? 256 races to choose from worldwide, all over the world. So we have a very large number of qualifying races, that we hope that lowers the barrier for entry to get into our lottery for travel purposes, expense purposes, and keeps the diversity of races high on our qualifying list. So anyhow, a lot of wonderful races to choose from. And like you said, could be 100K, could be 100 miles, could be 250 miles. Pick your poison. I know. Okay. Well, I don't know, did I miss anything with lottery? That about sums it up. We have, like I said, our entrance list is posted, our wait list is posted. We'll be updating the entrance list as more people sign up. They were just invited on Saturday and they have a couple weeks to complete that registration. So that'll be changing as we go. And then, so training camp, I'll just mention it. Our training runs, which are into May, Memorial Weekend every year, we'll be opening that up to our registered runners first. So we will probably do that today. And then that'll be open for 2 weeks and then to the runners only. So you'll be invited if you're a runner to register for training camp. You have 2 weeks and then it'll be open to the public. And if history repeats itself from last year, it will be sold out before the first of the year. So if you're interested in that, go onto the website, look up training runs. It's Memorial Weekend, 3 days, 70 miles of the course. You do not have to be in the race to register, although we do invite the runners first. But then after that, anybody could sign up. It's a really fun weekend. So check that out. And then I guess I'm getting into the RD report that we had planned to do at the end of each podcast. So training camp registration opening. And then the first December runner email will go out in probably the next week or so once we get more of our runners signed up, because we still have some people in limbo that haven't registered yet. And that's really about it for our D report. Trail work is happening. I shouldn't say already, it's just continually happening. But this morning I got to Craig's. Still in Auburn, luckily. Fly out later today, but he was headed out to go shuttle some of our trail work volunteers just today to El Dorado to do trail work. So it's just all week. On that note, trail work. We open trail work registration on the website. So if you want to participate in helping out at trail work, there are, I don't remember how many, John. Is it 6? Is it 10?
I think it might
There
be 10. Is
are,
it 10, Carrie? I think it
it
might
might
be
be
10.
10
Yeah.
on the website. Go under volunteers. Let's see, it's volunteers, volunteer opportunities, trail work opportunities in 2026. And it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, we can remember things. And there you can see how many spots are available, where the trail work will take place. Our first one in the spring is going to be Saturday, April 18th, which will be Cal Street in Volcano Canyon. There's 9 more spots. Anyhow, go on the website, look up our trail work. Obviously, trail work is a huge part of our organization, one of the pillars of the organization, and absolutely necessary for us to have a trail and a race to do trail work. Look that up, get involved, come out and learn some stuff about trail work. I can almost guarantee you're going to have a fun experience and work real hard. But yeah, those guys are out doing some trail work today. Craig's still just shuttling because he's, as of tomorrow, 6 weeks post knee replacement surgery, but still contributing by providing a shuttle so those guys can just work one way and have a car at the end. So I think that does it for the RD report. Anything else before we wrap this up, John Trent?
Yeah, Carrie, one of the things that popped into my head on Saturday was, like I was telling you before we started, I didn't even get in. I couldn't get into the auditorium. It was packed. I got there. My daughter Katie got in, but I couldn't fit in. So watched it, in my car a little bit. Went over to Depot Bay, the coffee shop down the street. Watched it a bit more with my wife Jill. Katie, came out of the auditorium. We watched it and everything. And then, driving back afterwards, it was kind of one of those kind of the more things change, the more they stay the same moments for me because there were, the lottery was over and there was still just a ton of people outside. They had walked out, but they didn't want to leave, and they're standing out visiting in front of the auditorium there, the theater. Um, and it reminded me, of almost 30 years ago, my first lottery where it was in the cafeteria, lot less people, but same thing. The lottery was over. And then, ultra runners, we just don't leave. We just we just stand around and talk about, whatever races we're going to do or, all this kind of stuff. And so really, even though the lottery, there was 11,000 people on Saturday, it still felt to me the same way it did almost 30 years ago afterwards, where all the people were just standing around, enjoying each other's company and just visiting about what had just transpired, what is going to transpire, and what they're hoping to do. So it was one of those moments for me where just like, yeah, I mean, the sport is changing every day, every minute, but the core of it, of people hanging out afterwards and just wanting to share, that's still there. And it was cool to me to just look at that and think, wow, I had more hair 30 years ago, but it's still the same thing. It's
I love that, John, and thank you so much for saying that because I felt it, but didn't know how to put that into words. Same thing. We're packing up the tables, we're loading the vehicles, getting out, and everybody's milling about. And, going into the lottery, we realized that with so few spots and so many applicants that ultimately more people are going to be disappointed than are excited about the picks. But however, the excitement in that auditorium, even though I think it was 24 total people that were in person out of the, 257 names we called, so in the 10% range, but you wouldn't know it. Like, if you didn't really know what was going on, you would think every person there just won the lottery because of the energy. And we all just want to absorb that, whether it's a conscious feeling that we have or not, like that, we're just like craving that energy. And especially when somebody's in the audience and they come running down like the price is right, and every person is happy and they don't know them and they didn't get in, but somebody there did, and they know that like their life is going to change. And anyhow, it's just to be a part of that and be in the same room of that, I think is, it's really special. I'm super grateful for that. And I think it just makes us all better people and connects us in a way that is impossible through social media, through phones, through technology, through like, it's just, and something that is hard to replicate in any other way, just to be there. And so I'm so glad you told that story about things have changed, but really the core of it and the heart of it has not.
Yeah. That's what made Saturday so cool. Yeah, and we gotta keep doing it. No matter
Yes.
even if it's like 50,000
We gotta
people,
keep
the
doing it, John.
lottery,
That's right. That's right. We might need a bigger room,
yeah,
but yeah.
we might need a bigger room, exactly.
And I didn't get to see you, but did Katie tell you we saw her on the trail later that day?
She did. She really enjoyed getting a chance to go out, and you were with Scott Wolf, and there were a
Yeah.
few other folks there and everything. And again, that's another tradition. After the lottery, people will go out, and it was a beautiful. I mean, it was a little foggy and a little, hard to see the sun type of thing, but people love to go out for a run right afterwards and everything. Yeah, and Katie really enjoyed visiting with you guys. As we both know, Scott is a very old school kind of guy, and he has very strong
Absolutely.
feelings about that. And it was interesting for Katie as a newish runner to hear some of Scott's feelings about the way the sport is going. And I love Scott, and I always
Absolutely.
appreciate what he has to share about that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. John, you hit the nail on the head with that. And yeah, we saw Katie and I was like, "Was your dad here? I never saw you." She's like, "He was. He just was like in the back and in and out and so forth. And, please tell him good luck tomorrow." And anyhow, so then we got to run a little bit together, which I've never got to run with Katie. So that was amazing. And yeah, I know it's really hard to get anything out of Monkey Boy Scott Wolf, but, he. Obviously, I'm being sarcastic if you know him, that he's not afraid to share his opinions, and we all love him, and he does so much for the race. And so, yeah, it was great to see Katie out on the trail and meet her friend and her dog that was with her.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
then she headed out. But, yeah, we saw Lamont on the trail, and so, he's in the race next year, so I said, "Yep, training starts today for Western States." That's the joke, that Saturday afternoon that training starts because everybody knows who's running, and we saw a bunch of other people, and it's just so fun. Like you said, that tradition that I was lucky enough to start 3 years ago, doing that run on Saturday after the lottery. Very cool. Okay, alright. Well,
You've
goodness, look
had
at us.
had a busy last several days. So I hope
It's
I
yeah.
hope actually as you get home, and I know you have other things going on at home, I hope you actually have a chance to kind of catch your breath a little bit.
Thank you. Yeah, me too, John Trent. It doesn't help that my flight today was canceled and they rebooked me on a red eye tonight. So that's not, but it's one of the things of travel, that one of the risks of travel. So, but yes, me too. Hoping to rest up here soon. And now we're kind of switching to operations mode and getting everything planned out for the race. But next month I get to see you again in person, and we're going to try to do this together in person, which is going to be really fun. We have our annual aid station captains meeting next month in person in Auburn. So, really fun to see all of those folks face to face. And then you and I are going to record episode 3 together at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, and your great technological savvy will be able to pull me through that. So I'm gonna really appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah, great. I don't know about the savvy, but we'll get through it together. We have so far. We have
Yeah.
made it through 2 episodes now together, and yeah, we'll figure it out together for sure. But thank you, John Trent, so much. Congratulations again on your amazing CIM finish yesterday. Thank you for bringing your knowledge and your heart to this podcast. This is really fun, and I look forward to many more episodes together. And thank you to everybody that's listening. Please subscribe to the Spirit of Western States, share it with your friends, share the love. We, hope to continue to facilitate information about the race, because we know there's a lot to know and a lot to learn, and also to continue incorporating historical facts and how we have gotten to where we are today. So yeah, we appreciate everyone listening. And on that note, John, I will see you in a month.
See you soon, Carrie. Take good care.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.